Joining us now from Marshall University, we have Academic Laboratory Manager Robert Clark. Thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys.
This is an interesting topic, and we showed a picture which was kind of funky, and he's here to explain what this newly published research of a fossil is. And you got to tell me what a plesiosaur is, because I joked that it looked like that sandworm in the movie Beetlejuice.
Yeah, so plesiosaurs, a lot of people think that they're just some kind of dinosaur, but they're actually completely separate group of ancient reptiles. And when I describe plesiosaurs, it's kind of tricky because they're so different from any animal alive today. But if you picture kind of a turtle-shaped body, but with no shell, 4 paddles or flippers, a short tail, and a long snake-like neck with a small head at the end of it, that's a plesiosaur. And they lived in oceans all over the world during the time of the dinosaurs, and were completely wiped out with the dinosaurs, leaving no descendants alive today.
Is this a very long creature? It looked long, which is why I'm asking. Does it have a great length? I mean, like dinosaur length?
We estimate Traskasaura to have been around 40 feet in length.
40 feet long.
And this particular plesiosaur is from the elasmosaur family of plesiosaurs, which are some of the longest plesiosaurs with the longest necks. And yeah, what makes Traskasaura really fascinating is it shows this strange mixture of primitive and advanced traits. So it's really hard to place within the elasmosaur family tree. It's got the skull and neck anatomy of more primitive, earlier elasmosaurs, but the paddles, the shoulder region, and the hips look like those of this later, more advanced group of elasmosaurs called the Aristonectines. So that makes it really hard. Where does it fit within the family tree? So our analysis shows that most likely Traskasaura was one of the earlier, more primitive elasmosaurs, but resembles this later advanced group because it was swimming in a way similar to them, causing it to develop similar anatomy in the parts of its body used for swimming.
Okay, and you keep using this term Traskasaur. What is that?
Yeah, so we chose to name it Traskasaura sandrae, and there's a really amazing story behind that name. And it goes back to the late 70s up in Canada when twin brothers, Mike and Pat Trask, moved out west from Ontario to British Columbia, and they settled on Vancouver Island in Courtenay. And these guys grew up collecting fossils, and so they continued to do so in their new home. And it was one November day in 1988 that Mike Trask was out looking for fossils with his daughter Heather. And typically they would just find little marine invertebrates, fossil shells, things like that. But this day they happened upon these 2 giant vertebrae sticking out of the ground. And those turned out to be the first 2 vertebrae of this huge 40-foot long elasmosaur.
And so, how did all of this information end up at Marshall University?
That's what I was
well, I'm going to get to that. Let me tell you, the first thing they did, and we come into the picture way later, but they had to contact the local museum there, which is the Courtenay and District Museum, and they got a team of scientists and volunteers together. They came up and dug up the fossils, brought them back to the museum to study, and up till this point, this museum was just a tiny community museum. But it really started growing because of this discovery, and the public was really interested in these creatures that once lived in this area where they lived. And so they really started growing the museum, and that's Mike and his daughter Heather, but remember his twin brother Pat was also in the area. He became the museum curator of that very museum, and so he was able to oversee this elasmosaur skeleton and promote paleontology in the area and science in general, so much so that the people of British Columbia in 2018 voted for this elasmosaur to become the official fossil emblem of British Columbia. So it's the provincial fossil of British Columbia. But up till this point, and I'm getting to Marshall in just a minute.
I knew you were
really curious.
Up until this point, it still didn't have a name yet because that first skeleton was not distinct enough, or it wasn't well preserved enough to show it to be distinct from other elasmosaurs. So that started to change in 2020 when a second Traskasaura skeleton was found by Pat Trask, the twin brother who's now the curator. And at this point, he contacted Marshall. He contacted Dr. Robin O'Keefe.
Was there a connection that he knew at Marshall?
Yeah, well, through a mutual colleague, he was able to get into contact with Dr. Robin O'Keefe, who's my colleague at Marshall, and is a plesiosaur expert, world-renowned,
that makes sense.
and is also the lead author of our paper. So Dr. O'Keefe made the trip out from West Virginia to British Columbia, looked at the material, studied it, and said, wow, this is a really unique elasmosaur. It's way different than anything else. It's its own genus and species, and he decided to name it after Mike and Heather Trask, the father-daughter team,
high honor for
who
them.
found that first skeleton.
Yeah. Well, that speaks volumes, and a lot to know the fact that this person reached out to Marshall University.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, like I said, Robin O'Keefe is known worldwide for being a plesiosaur expert, and I want to tell you it's a tragic part of this story next, because Mike Trask passed away just 8 days before our paper was published, honoring him with the name after a long illness.
Right.
But he did know that this was being named after him, because his twin brother Pat presented him with the press release printed out and framed, showing him that his legacy would live on in the name of this elasmosaur that he dedicated so much of his life to.
That is wonderful.
And then, so that's the genus name, Traskasaura. The species name, Traskasaura sandrae, that also honors someone, Dr. O'Keefe's mother, Sandra O'Keefe, who passed away from breast cancer years ago. And she lived in the Pacific Northwest, just south of Vancouver Island. And so he wanted to honor her with that name.
That's a nice tribute.
It is. So both names are real legacy type names honoring these special people.
And I'm really glad you explained the connection, because when I first started hearing about this that you all had published, I thought, please tell me this was not found in the Ohio River or 12 Pole Creek.
You don't want to know that lived there?
I'm glad it was much farther away, but that you all had this connection to be able to get the word out about it.
You also have another side gig on this. On top of the paleontology issue, you're also an artist. Tell me about that.
That's right. Yeah, so that artwork, I was really thankful to be a co-author on the paper, but also the paleo artist commissioned to that's my artwork.
Your work?
Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome.
To reconstruct this thing, how it might have looked in its natural environment. Believe it or not, I've never seen the movie Beetlejuice, so I wasn't trying to resemble anything in that movie. That banding pattern is actually inspired by an ocean-dwelling snake that's alive today called the banded sea crate. And what it does is that banding pattern serves to kind of break up its body outline so that its prey can't really tell where that head full of sharp teeth actually is. And so we think the long neck of elasmosaurs could have been kind of similar to that, to something like an ammonite, which is that squid-like shelled creature, which were found really abundantly in the fossils. In the rocks where Traskasaura was found. So we think they might have eaten them.
Usually you evolve to have that for a reason. Why such a long, elongated neck way beyond the body size?
Yeah, so we think that might separate the head from the rest of the body so it can pivot, and then with that banding pattern being kind of confusing, that ammonite's thinking, where is the head of this thing with all those sharp teeth that's trying to get me? And before it realizes where the head is, it's too late and it's grabbed it.
Well, we were looking at all those pictures not knowing you were the artist behind it. That's very well done. Thank you.
Well, this is so fascinating. Yeah. You're going to have to come back more often, because we learned a lot.
And I've already learned, don't call that a dinosaur.
That's right.
Don't call that a dinosaur. Robert, thank you.
Thank you so much,
guys. It's been so fun.
Yeah.